Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Stratford Live TV with Joe Draper
and Edward Lowe. It's the first episode for 2020 and we've got lots of great things in store. We'll be sticking to a similar format but also bringing new things to you all the time. In today's episode, we're going to be following me when I visit the Mad Museum. So Ed has never visited the Mad Museum, so it'll be... You have?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you hadn't. Oh no, it's Jack, the cameraman, that hadn't been. Getting you confused.
Yeah, I have.
You've been?
I've been. It's very
okay.
good. It's excellent.
So when did you visit? Because I know that they're constantly changing the exhibition.
That's a really good question. It's before we had Ted, and he's 3, so crikey, it must be 4 years ago probably.
Okay.
So a long time, so I'm sure they've changed everything from when I went.
Well, I know from when we were speaking to the founder, Richard, obviously to keep things fresh, they do...
How long, what could it have been then? Because how long has it been open? Have I got that wrong?
Is this a test now?
It is.
It is a test.
Let's
answer
leave it.
to that question will probably be in the upcoming video.
I just don't think we did have Ted. I gauge everything now with that.
Because now he's probably at the perfect age to start appreciating it. And I think with a venue like that, it will sort of move with the child. So you'll appreciate one thing because they're changing all the time.
Yeah.
And at first it might just be the sounds, the movement, the colours. And then as it moves forward, because it's all kinetic art, some pieces are quite abstract, so it's more about sort of different sounds, different textures, and then others have got kind of a bit more of a dialogue to them. So it's a bit more literal, so it's, suits all different kinds of people really.
Yeah, it was really good, yeah.
But yeah, take a look at the next clip and you'll learn more about the Mad Museum in Stratford. Hi Richard, thanks for meeting us today here behind the scenes of the Mad Museum.
It's a pleasure.
As the founder, do you want to give us a bit of background as to how the business came into being?
Well, it was something I always wanted to do, even when I was 18 or 20. I was always interested in robots and little bits of automata. And when I was getting near 60, I thought, well, we better do something and
time is now.
Have a bit of fun, put something back into the community, and come up with the Mad Museum.
Absolutely. Well, I think you certainly have done that because, I mean, you've got huge sort of visitor numbers, haven't you, with all sort of ages as well, which I guess, you know, encompasses sort of everybody that we've got sort of visiting us. But if you give me a bit of detail about sort of some of the items that we could come and see here at the Mad Museum.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just picking up on what you said about the people, you know, it's from 3 to 93 really, and you know, we've had 60,000 people in just this year, you know.
Okay.
So there's basically, the genre is kinetic art, and within that we have a lot of things called automata, which are sort of operated with different levers and cranks and camshafts.
So it's very sort of you've got a lot of
engineering sort of base.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you've got your own participation as well.
Yes, it is. It's not a kids only event, but obviously the children really enjoy it. We go loads of school trips. But we're sort of trying to teach them a bit of physics, a little bit of art, a little bit of humour. I do like to have humour.
So it's very engaging for them, isn't it?
Humour. And you know, we want to get them off the PlayStations and the computers and show them some, you know, traditional physics really.
So they can physically interact with, even though it is still primarily visual in some respects.
I mean, the grandparents love bringing the grandchildren here, and you know, you see the smiles on the faces. I mean, I say to parents, you know, if you want your kids to love you, bring them to Mad. You know, it's. I mean, I've stood behind kids where they've said, "Mum, this is the best day of my life." You know,
because museums can sometimes, for children, have a bit of a. And I know that they have changed in years, but it's still primarily something where you sort of follow a route. You can't be too noisy. You certainly can't like run around.
They can be as noisy as they like.
You can interact in certain zones, but here it is very much sort of them sort of completing the artwork, if you like, because the push of the button activates it.
Yeah, it does. You know, so they feel they're part of it. They can make as much noise as they like. And they just have a great time. And you know, they can't really do the same as this anywhere else. This is pretty unique to England, and
because there isn't anywhere similar to this in the whole of the UK, is there?
Not really. Not really. And Stratford's such a brilliant place to have it. You know, 'cause it's such a.
And what do you love most about Stratford, would you say?
Well, I lived in Kenilworth all my life, but I've always felt that Stratford's got charisma. You know, it's a place people want to be. There's life. It's got some soul.
It's a lot of energy, isn't
there?
there?
It's lovely. It's lovely. Yeah. And, you know, we get on really well with the community, all the different traders and the Shakespeare Birthplace Trust. We all work together, the RSC.
Because you're on such a key road, aren't you, here on Henley Street?
Yeah, we put pieces into the RSC for Christmas, you know, when they're doing something special.
Okay.
So we all get on well together.
So tell me a bit more about that then. Give me an example of how you've collaborated with the RSC.
To be honest, I'm trying to remember what particular piece we had made for them. Was
it a mouse? Something to do with a mouse?
I think it was. You'd have to ask my nephew, Mike Abbott's. He would know for sure. But he was backwards and forwards to the theatre, you know, making sure everything was working fine.
Oh, brilliant.
But I'm sorry, I can't.
So you've got whole ranges though, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
we
that's
have.
really exciting.
Yeah, we have.
And there is something sort of exciting that's a new addition, because obviously you'll be adding into the main collection to keep things afresh.
Well, there's a couple of things I'd like to tell you about. One is we had a competition of the school children who visited, and we've got a marble wall in there which I'm sure you'll be filming, where the children can make their own marble run with magnetic pieces of wood that go on, and then we have these special boxes at the time where the ball goes through, and we had a design competition for the best special type of thing. And I think it was a young girl came up with the design, and we said if they designed it, we would make the winning piece. So these pieces we've got here are the winning pieces. So this, drop the ball.
Well, these things happen.
Don't worry. The beauty of live television. So the ball will go in there, and it will spin around there a few times.
Brilliant.
And out.
Excellent.
And a Stratford resident invented that. One of the kids invented that. And so Mike Abbott's my nephew, who is such a clever man.
Yeah.
He
actually
has made these and sort of interpreted her design. So that's one thing.
So that's really special for her to be part of a permanent exhibit.
Really special.
Yeah.
So my nephew runs the mechanical side over here. My son Ian Simmons,
and that's all on site as well.
Runs the admin, the shop, the wages, the school visits over in Kenilworth. So they're a great pair between the two of them. The other thing I wanted to tell you about was, which you probably already know, we opened on the 10th of January our own telephone kiosk down the other end of Henley Street. So we bought a telephone kiosk. We've had an artist who is the best in the world at making kinetic art.
And where's he from, sorry?
From Switzerland.
Okay.
Pascal Betex.
Yeah.
And with lots of people from Stratford visiting, we opened the telephone box, which I'd love you to show on the film if you can. And,
absolutely.
It's really livened up the other end of Henry Street.
Well, it's unusual because we don't have that many site-specific pieces of artwork in Stratford, and we certainly haven't had many new ones of recent times.
Yeah.
And this one, I think, does sort of stand sort of apart from any of the others.
Does.
So that in itself is a great sort of advertisement, which is all fabulous for the museum as well.
It is. Pascal actually did one on Lake Geneva some years ago for 6 months for a piece, and they loved it so much it's still there now. They just kept it forever.
Yeah.
So we've been keeping an eye open for a phone box, and we got the opportunity to get the one in Henley Street. We straight on the phone to Pascal. Can you build something for us?
Excellent.
And it's a lot of fun.
It's great. No, it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time today, Richard.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
It's been really insightful, but obviously we've only kind of skimmed the surface. You need to really come down here to sort of appreciate it fully firsthand. But to get a taste, people can look on your Facebook page and Instagram to get a bit more of a feel for things. But really, you need to be here to really sort of get to grips with it.
You do. I mean, it's a business, but we try and run it a bit philanthropically.
Yeah.
We don't want to sting families. We want them to come and enjoy a day out in quite a traditional family way. But having said that, don't think everything's old-fashioned, because it isn't. There's some really
and
interesting.
And you can still come time and time again. So little ones can enjoy it in a different way, a sort of year later or 2 years later, which is a beauty, isn't it?
The sort of 2, 3, 4 year olds sort of enjoy the sensory, the noises, the marbles crashing around, the lights flashing on and off. As they get a bit older, they're a bit more inquisitive on how things work.
Want to understand why it does that,
Then you'll get sort of art students coming in who really, understand the art and the humour. And then you'll get retired old people like me coming in and with their mates and going, oh, this is great. Takes me back to my
Want to do my own
Meccano.
thing.
Yeah. So
Oh,
there's
that's
something
good.
for
So it really
everybody.
is for everybody.
And do you know, there's as many ladies come in here as males.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
The
Well, you can see that
the
walking around
females,
today.
We have every bit as many females
Yeah.
as males.
That's all
They
good.
absolutely love it.
Fabulous.
So,
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you
been a
so much
pleasure.
for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for what you're doing. Bye-bye.
Well, I found that really interesting. It was really good to see it again, all in full action. So, yeah, how did you find it?
Oh, I thought it was really, really enjoyable. I mean, it was busy when we went, so you could really see all of the children and the adults kind of interaction. People had different kind of attentions, I guess. So there's different things that will always attract all of us. And some people would be sort of stood at some things for a long time and then they just walk past others. So I think the key to it is that there is a huge variety. It isn't sort of just on one kind of scale. Some are really quite minute. And that also brings me on to something that we did touch on, the site-specific artwork on Henley Street. What do you think to that? I mean, that is obviously large scale. It's on one of the most famous streets in Stratford.
Yeah, no, it's a really good idea. I think it's very good to capture the imagination. Obviously, they do a load of work up there at the moment as well. So I think it's quite very clever how they've managed to put it into the phone box.
Yeah,
Really
I
good.
think it's great because obviously they're going to be capturing a lot of the tourists also that do arrive at the coach park. So it's great advertising for the Mad Museum, which, you know, that's what we want. We want our businesses to be supported well, but also it's very eye-catching. It's completely moving. It's actually a Belgian artist. So they do have artists from all over the world, and that is one of their key players. So, yeah, a great new addition to Henley Street.
Do you know what they should do? They should put a CCTV camera in, see if anyone thinks it's still a phone box, and then goes in and then...
Well, yeah, I mean, you do
Realises
wonder
it
because
isn't.
they've quite a few have been converted, haven't they? So whether they're
Do
cash
they actually
points,
still exist? Like, why would you use a phone box now?
I don't know. I know that there's another one on Henley Street that is a cash point. But is there any phone?
Do you ever remember as a kid you used to have those things that people would tell you and think it used to work, and I tried it once. You used to get the phone, when they went from using money, you
Yes.
could then go and get a phone card.
Oh
Do you
yeah, I
remember that?
forgot about that. Yeah.
And
yeah.
somebody said to me once, if you put nail varnish, I think it was nail varnish over the strip at the back, you get unlimited credits.
Forever and ever.
Yeah, so obviously I tried it. Clearly it never worked. That's all
Oh,
these things
so you can't get
never do.
unlimited nails or unlimited credit?
No.
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 Oh, well, at least
Definitely
no one
wouldn't
else is going to try that now.
No, exactly. There you go. I saved you probably 30 seconds of your life. So, anytime.
I think at that point we should move on to your stat chat.
Yes.
Hopefully you'll be a little bit more well versed in this one. Today Ed's going to be talking about the roller coaster ride of the last 10 years in Stratford upon Avon in terms of property sales. So I think that's one that, especially now, we all want to be gripped to. He'll also have a great buy-to-let deal. And then we'll be talking about events in your region.
In this episode Stat Chat, I'm going to be looking at the local property market and the volatility around it, hence the word and association with the roller coaster and what's happened in the last decade, because let's be honest, a lot's happened really in the last decade. But I think firstly, the best place to start is, well, what do you actually call, now we're in the roaring 20s as I'm told it's going to be, 2010? I don't know what you really class it as. Is it teens, tens? I'm actually really not sure what on earth we classify the last decade as. All I can probably say is it's good to have tucked it away and we can now move forward and everything is rosy. So let's drill down into some key statistics. So the average house price has risen in the last 10 years from 213,500 to 298,700, which is an eye-watering, when you break this down, £163 and £85 per week, every week for the last 10 years. Scary, hey. However, there are some things around that. Now, you do have to remember at the beginning of the last decade, we were basically just coming out of the teeth of the credit crunch. All the nonsense came out with the toxic debt and it just was a really difficult place with a financial meltdown. Obviously this decade, we would like to think things will be a bit different. So what did it actually represent? Well, that gave you a percentage gain of almost 40%, so just shy, 39.9% was the average growth over the last 10 years. However, there is one word that we can't ignore, and that word is inflation. So once you take inflation into context, what it actually means is they really only rose 6.9%. Now, when you compare that to previous decades, so for example, let's jump back to the 1980s with Wham and everything, 42.5%, and then you go 13.2% drop in the 90s, and then a rise, which is the staggering one. We all probably remember it if you're certainly my age. 62.8% in the 2000s, which means when I first got into the industry and things were going like absolute billio, and it was no surprise that was never going to be sustainable. But what it has said is that actually in the last decade there has been pretty much a very steady growth. There's still been growth, but it's been very much a pedestrian pace, which is also then runs out in the actual physical transaction numbers. So on average 1.12 million homes were sold each year of the last decade. That's 26.4% less than the decade before, in the noughties, when the average of 1.52 million properties were sold annually. So there is very much a big drop off of transaction levels. So what are the underlying issues? Well, we've got a number really, but I think you can never get away from the fact that the media have a massive part to play. So if we all remember, Mark Carney in his absolute wisdom came out and said that the property price is going to drop 30% not all that long ago. All these things definitely have a part to play in your decision making, because all you're doing is thinking, well, is this the right time? Is this the right time? And if there's a reason to not do it, as Brits, we probably won't do it. We'll procrastinate and sit, which is typically the worst thing to do. And what's really frustrating, and this is where this roller coaster theme kind of comes back in, is the fact that bad news sells. Actually, when you look at the truth of it, we're told now repeatedly that we're going into generation rent. Nobody can afford to buy. So how is it in that case that 32.7% of homes last year were bought by first-time buyers versus 22.8% in 2009? It's gone up. So over 10, well, just less than 10%. So again, you've got this differing of opinions of reality versus what you're being told, which really doesn't help. At the end of the day, there are still problems within the housing market. I don't think these fundamental things are ever going to shift. So for example, you've got the lack of building enough homes, which I know is a contentious point, because as you drive around, all you see is new homes being built left, right and centre. Wages, obviously, they're not going on increasing, sadly, as much as everyone would like them to be. Stiffer mortgage rules, but that's another thing to come on in a second. And people, just less of them really wanting to move. I think that's a fundamental thing. If you look back to 2019, there's around about 14% higher than they were in 2009, and yet that still is 50% lower than the average in the noughties. So it just shows that the transaction levels and people moving is all up and down, up and down. It's kind of all over the place. One of the key cornerstones to any marketplace, you have to always go back to the interest rate. What's the interest rate doing, where it's at? So the Bank of England, it has been 0.5%, it's been 0.25%, it's now 0.75%. The reality is, actually, when you really look at that, that's cheap. You know, even when I first got into the industry, you're talking sort of 4.5%, 5%, which is a good rate. So now it's just like, this is cheap to borrow. I think the big difference is now, it's fairly safe to say that that rate can't stay like that forever. So therefore, prices are going to be going up. The difference this time round, and going back to that mortgage point, is that back in the day, in the 70s and 80s, you had Black Friday when it went up into double digits interest rates. The difference then is there was no stress testing around mortgages, so people were right on the line. Now when you're getting a mortgage, they're actually factoring that if the interest rate went up to around about 6 to 6.5%, can you still afford it? And the answer to that has to be yes, otherwise they probably won't lend to you. Now, that is a big problem, because your lifestyle will change dramatically in terms of the disposable income you have. However, most importantly, you can still afford it, probably only just, but you can, to the point where you won't get really repossessed, which is obviously the problem that's happened previously. Horrible place to be, but that's the most important thing, that you retain the ownership of that property. And so look, I'm not a financial advisor, not a mortgage advisor, little T's and C's there for you. However, I think that it doesn't take a genius to realise that with the rate as it is, it's probably going to go one way. Therefore, if you're not on a fixed rate, and actually does the population as a whole, 29.3% of us aren't, I think it's the wise thing to say you should start probably looking at it, because the standard variable rates, as soon as they kick in, the banks will be all over that, and they'll be trying to chase you down with higher rates. So it'd be well worth trying to sort of see a little bit ahead and try to get yourself into a nice lock deal, and then you know what your outgoings are going to be. You can predict your outgoings, and you're just in a safer place to be. So it'll be really interesting to see what the Roaring Twenties are going to bring, and if you'd like to know more, then stay up to date with these stat chats, and we will hopefully give you lots more information about what is going to happen with the housing market.
Ed, thanks so much for Stat Chat. I think, again, another really, really interesting article. What do you think, though, the main sort of conclusion of that is, though, so that it's something that sort of we can just take away quite simply?
I think it was more than one thing, really. I think a lot of it is the political uncertainty, which then drives that uncertainty, then has a massive influence, and as it particularly last year with since Brexit was announced, I think the teeth really came into effect last year. Obviously that's now, uncertainty's gone, so it'll be interesting to see what happens forward from there. So I think if you look back, we had so many different comings and goings on the political front over the last 10 years.
Sure.
So that definitely has a factor, and obviously interest rates clearly have a factor as well. I mean, I think people forget that actually it's still really cheap to borrow money, but invariably, because the rate has been so low for so long, I think it's difficult to see that it really should probably only go one way, which is then back up.
Yeah.
So I think definitely it's advisable probably to be looking at fixing rates on mortgages. But it is still cheap fundamentally, and still I think
when you put it into the greater context, isn't it?
It is, and I think at the end of the day, and putting it into greater context, property really, as we've looked in previous stat chats, always outperforms pretty much all the other investment types, and it's probably one of the safest as well, because it will always exist, whereas your share obviously overnight,
less volatile, isn't it?
It's less volatile, but it will always exist. So in the stock market, you could buy shares in a company, then go, and that's it, you're done.
Of course.
So that disappears and you've lost everything, where you're never going to have that with property. So it may fluctuate in value, but it will always retain a value, whereas certain investments will lose it completely. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, property, as we would like to probably think, that's what we do, is always the best investment.
Yeah, excellent. No, another great stat chat. Thank you very much. That will also bring us on now to our event in the region. It's actually a new event to Stratford. It's been set up by Stratford. So if you do go on the stratford.co.uk site, you will get all details, not just of this event, but also any upcoming, which are great because the town hosts do run a lot of events in town, manage them very well. The next one is going to be Restaurant Fortnight. So it's the 6th to the 22nd of March. It's a new initiative. Lots of different venues in town will be involved, doing special events, special menus, there'll be special deals. And I'm sure, like all the other events that they have started, it will start sort of like this and sort of just continue to grow. So I really do hope that it gets the support it deserves. Obviously, if you see any of the town hosts walking around, feel free to ask them about it. That's what they're there for. Also, any other information, you can even try and test their knowledge on the Mad Museum, because obviously you all know about it as well now.
Just don't ask Jack, because he doesn't know anything.
No. So yeah, next event, Restaurant Fortnight, 6th to the 22nd of March.
Yeah. And that's it. That concludes our first episode of 2020.
Absolutely.
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Had to mention food on the first one.
Yeah, well, to be honest, it's normally alcohol, so that's actually quite good.
Oh.
Although don't mention food, so Jack's had food poisoning, so he's been a poorly boy.
Yeah, no.
But he's definitely making up for it now with his 5th flapjack. Is it 5th? Third.
Oh my goodness me.
Yeah. Wow.
Oh my goodness. Let's hope his children aren't watching.
Well, and how many Capri Suns have you had?
2 now.
You do know they turn you orange?
Yeah.
You look like an Oompa Loompa.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. Won't be as orange as Joe though.
And on that bombshell, just remember to live, love and invest.
Live, love and invest.